We can measure our ketone levels in the blood, in the urine, but as people get keto adapted and cells starting using ketones very efficiently, we hardly get high levels of ketones both in urine and in the blood. So one way to understand if we are still producing ketones is to measure acetones in the breath using a device such as Acetrack. And I bring to you an interview I recorded in Switzerland with the co-founder of Acetrack, Anders Moorman. Anders is here to talk about Acetrack. What is Acetrack?
Acetrack is a breathalyzer. In one exhalation, it detects the level of acetone you have in your breath in parts per million. And if you have a high acetone value when you do one exhalation, it means your liver has started to be in ketogenesis or ketosis the last 10 to 60 minutes ago. So it will really see if you're in ketosis and if your lifestyle changes has taken effect.
What would be the usefulness of that for a healthy person and, for example, a diabetic person?
For healthy persons, that's actually the market. We started selling this in Sweden. It's a Swedish product and we're selling it all over Europe. But we started selling to healthy people that are just interested in their health, or ultra marathoners and people that would like to see at what point you're energizing your body using fatty acids rather than carbs. So that's the use for that. And we stay with the healthy people. Many times they're not as much in ketosis as they think. And the beauty with it's a non-invasive tool, you can measure as much as you want, is that it will see how much actually during the day your ketosis goes up and down. And you don't see that with blood sampling. If you blood sampling, you have 1 millimole per liter of ketone bodies. You don't know really when that was produced. We see exactly when that's happening and when you go out and how it goes up and down. And the healthy people typically are a healthy body typically doesn't have excess fat, and they typically eat too little fat, dietary fat. So they are not keto adapted, as we say, and then it's really hard to get in there. But then this tool helps them say, they can write in our user forum, for example, and they ask, and then we answer, but if you add some good fats in the morning in your coffee or whatever you want to do, you need to prime the pump a little bit. Then a few days later, they get high numbers. So they can see it works. So you don't get like a theory or a recipe, you get proof. For me, and this is also very individual.
Do you use it?
I use it all along. I was not in ketosis this morning, disappointingly, but that could also be that we had a late dinner last night. And there's so many things that can make you go out of ketosis. And when you start using these devices, you see, wow, it has to be perfect to stay in it, actually. And for sick people, it's absolutely a good tool to combine with also measuring your blood sugar and also measuring your blood ketones. But then eventually, as you those are invasive, they need blood sampling. Ours doesn't. So
it's super expensive to buy.
And very expensive. Ours is quite affordable and lasts for a long time. Then you can eventually replace blood sampling when you trust our measurements. But we don't expect people that are with the diagnosis that have special recommendation from their doctors to switch to our devices. So our main market is really pre-diabetics rather, and people with vague symptoms walking down towards metabolic disorders.
I had a very interesting case of a person who has ataxia and he falls. He did all kinds of genetic testing, very expensive everywhere in the world, and they couldn't find anything and that would explain that, and many drugs that resulted. I saw this patient and he had a scratch from a dog and it wouldn't heal. And I said, how old is that scratch? And he said, like 3 or 4 days, and it was still healing. And he said, no, you have to do your blood tests. And he checked and he was pre-diabetic and he was spiking everywhere with the glucose. So I put him in a ketogenic diet and he started measuring. And the most incredible thing happened. He stopped falling. And he's been falling for 10 years.
But for epileptics, that has been known for 100 years that a ketogenic diet or a low-carb diet at least is beneficial. And our devices are actually used in a test now in a Swedish hospital for epileptic children. They could completely go off epilepsy and medicines, or most of them, if they stick to ketogenic diets.
Yes. And can you show us how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a device here, a handheld device that comes actually with detachable mouthpieces. So there's only breathalyzer in the world that has that. In your case, with your patients, you can have one device in the clinic and then have this one as one-time use. But for a family, for example, you can have one hardware and then you can have everyone can have their own mouthpiece. So everyone have their own app where they gather their own numbers. So speaking of app, I will now start the app. So now it's Blue connected. It means that I have Bluetooth connected. It works with any modern phone, any Android or any iPhone. Now it will warm up. The user interface is in English or German or French or Swedish right now, and we're actually coming out with interfaces in Portuguese and Spanish.
Great, that's great.
Within a few months actually. So yeah, that's great. So what happens now is I will make an installation. Our device is the only one that has a built-in pressure sensor, because the most important things when you build any kind of breathalyzer going to capture a molecule from your breath is not how good the molecule sensor is, it's how well you sample, which means that we have put in a pressure sensor, as you will see now. So the live, I will see the pressure I exhale with on the phone, and we do that to make sure that I can exhale with the same pressure over at least 6 seconds. Okay. So that we sample as much as possible from the bottom of the lungs, because that's where the gas exchange is. So to be a little bit biophysics here, when you're in ketosis, the residue of every fatty acid that is broken down is acetone. Acetone is a free-floating gas. If you ever smelled on a nail polish remover bottle, you can see it's sticky. So it will fall out into the blood and it will be ventilated out through the body, through your lungs. And the half-life of that is 30 minutes. So if you measure often, you will capture if you ever during a 24-hour cycle are in ketosis. I don't think I will be now, but we'll see. Okay. So I will hold up this for you, but you typically watch the screen. I don't know if you see that, but oh, that's a full exhalation. And then in a few seconds now we will present the result. Anything below 10 is not ketosis. It's all individual, I should say. You establish your baseline, but anything over 25 is typically ketosis, and anything in between is mild. Do you find a correlation between this and other tests? Yeah. Or it is a correlation. It doesn't measure the same thing as doing testing blood ketones with sticking your finger and using a device for that. The unit for that is millimole per liter. But of course there is a correlation, because we measure the production, and the liver is like a refinery, produces the petrol. The petrol is the BHP. So, and the drawback or other thing to think about when you do blood testing is that when you test on blood ketones, you burn them, you consume them. So just because you have a low BHP millimole per liter, it doesn't mean that you weren't in ketosis. We're on the opposite. If you have a high number, that means you were in ketosis 10 minutes ago. That's for sure. I see. If you have a low number, it could mean that you were earlier, but you're not now, or that you're just not producing now, but you can still have a high number. So they have different kind of waves among them. But if you're over time, your highest values divided by 25 will be transferable to your millimole per liter. So if you have 25 or 50, 50 would mean approximately 2 millimoles per liter. I have 1, and this is typically for me. So this is the lowest number you can have. It's 1 ppm. And during the day, this is all very individual, but for me, and quite more people that are middle-aged, I tend to have high values only in the morning. Early, directly when I wake up, I have the highest numbers, which tends to mean that I actually produce most keto bodies last few hours before I wake up. Because then it's calm in the body, and that's what I'm getting at. It's the top hormones will kick you out immediately from production. Insulin, of course, adrenaline, cortisol. Number of all these hormones tend to make the brain saying, oh yeah, we've got a lot of different things going on now, we can't just let the liver focus on ketosis. So if you live a too busy life, you have a bad night's sleep, if you're working out stress, you're out. Yeah. Do you usually do keto, or you vary on your diet? Yeah, so I've never really been unhealthy. I've been healthy all the time. I was kind of overweight 5 years ago, a lot more overweight only 2 years ago than I am now. And what I've landed in is I don't eat breakfast anymore. I've had my last breakfast. I can't eat late either. So I have a long fasting window. That's what I have, and then so typically 18 hours, and then I eat over 6 hours. Sometimes I have lunch too, and I only eat dinner. That's my thing. So fasting is just as important, and when you eat, and of course controlling your hunger, satiety, and things like that. That's also important. And then I have stopped eating as much as possible ultra-processed food and wheat. I don't eat bread, and I can still eat potatoes and some carbs. I try to be metabolic flexible. That's what we see with our users too. No one except these epileptic children really lasts with an extreme diet all the time. I can understand people going carnivore for a while, great, or vegan or keto or whatever, but it won't train your flexibility. So we're evolutionary not really built for eating at the same time and the same thing every day. We ate what we found, and sometimes we starved, and sometimes we had plenty. And we're absolutely the best animal on the world to store fat. We're great at storing fat, and that's why we're probably taking over this planet, because we are made to store fat. The problem with today's world is that
our environment,
there's bad food everywhere all the time.
Yes, and yesterday we saw some really great talks here in Switzerland in the Congress we are at, with cancer remission, and today with diabetes remission, when you have higher level of ketone. So that would be really useful for those patients to control those levels.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to advocate that. I think if you have a diagnosis, you should do home monitoring generally, but this one plays a role. This one has a role to play.
Yeah, that's so easy.
Yeah, it's easy.
And it's much more reliable than ketones in urine, for example.
Problem with urine sticks, first of all, the chemistry in them is not that really reliable, so there's not really a sensor in it. And secondly, your dilution of urine is going to be different every day. And it's still going to be very vague, because it will be dependent on your hydration. So this one, it gives us a straight number. If you look at my, I had 7 this morning, I had 33 a couple of days ago, 17, 7, 34, 13, 11, 8. That's typically my numbers, and over 30, I'm happy. That's typically in the morning of a great day and a good night's sleep.
Well, thank you so much. That's very interesting. I wish you all the best.
Yeah, thank you for keeping. Thanks.